Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of T.N.T. Garage and Performance, and today we're going to go into the classroom on Winter Beater 101. What I got behind me is a truck that I found for my son for winter so he doesn't have to drive the C10. Now, this is a 98 Dodge Dakota, which would be classified as a mid-size pickup, not a mini pickup like an S10 or a Nissan Toyota, certainly not a full-size truck. But this one, what drew it to me is, number one, it's four-wheel drive. Number two, it's got the 5.2 liter Magnum, which is a 318 cubic inch V8 under the hood, all but indestructible. Behind it is a 46 RE transmission, pretty stout little truck, torsion bar front suspension, all very old technology but very reliable technology. So we're going to go through this thing and get it ready for winter. There's a couple things I want to address with it, a couple tips I could show you guys, and as you can see, the four-wheel drive works. My son has already had fun with this truck, so that'll make it real easy for me to work underneath. That's awesome. But enough talking. I'm going to get out of my fancy jacket, get into the garage, get the heat going, and jump on this thing. So let's get to it. Just because a few things came about when I first drove it. One, I noticed a slight mist, especially when it's cold, and it was kind of damp, 30-some degrees, pretty decent humidity. So first thing you're going to do on any old vehicle that you plan on driving all winter is go ahead and do a tune-up on it. So I've got all the parts. We'll go ahead, get everything out of here, get the new stuff in. We got our set of wires, we got a rotor, we got a cap, and we got 8 new spark plugs. Now, a lot of Mopar guys say, and I disagree with them, that Champion is the only plug you can run in a Mopar. And it won't run right unless you run a Champion. Well, I hate to tell them that that's not the case. I've been running Autolite copper cores in every Magnum series engine I've ever owned. Never had an issue. Good plugs, they're cost effective, and they're not Champions. So let's get a wrench and get these out. On these older Dakotas, second gen Dakotas, it's a little easier just to pull the air box and everything out so you can get to your passenger side plugs. Now we can get to the plugs a lot easier on this side. Alright, we got our old plugs out. And other than that one's got a little gook on it. There's nothing alarming, just a lot of crap. Running fairly rich on number 8, number 6, number 4, number 2. I mean, they look all right. They've been in there, a little while. They haven't been in there forever. These are NGKs. But we're going to go ahead and throw these brand new auto lights in. But remember, before you put your new plugs in, you want to gap them. So on most vehicles, you look at your emissions sticker here, and it'll give you the plug gap. So 40 thousandths of an inch. Grab yourself some sort of gap tool like this. This has got all the common gaps, and then your spreader so you can move your ground strap to make sure you have the proper gap. So I'm going to go ahead and gap the new plugs and throw them in with a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Just to make sure if we got to do this again, they ain't stuck in there. But we got all the plugs in, and remember, when you're putting anti-seize on these, don't go overboard. You just need a little bit on the threads. You really don't want to get it on the end of the plug and into the combustion chamber. So now we're going to pull the cap rotor and wires out. I already got the screws loose. And there's a couple ways you can do this. Alright. Oh yeah. Yeah, she was ready for a change. But like I was saying, there's a couple ways you can go ahead and pull this out. You can leave all the wires on so you know where they go, but almost every American V8 is 1843657 of course before the LS stuff, and Ford stuff, their banks are numbered different, but other than that, they're all pretty much the same. So as long as you know where number 1 is on your distributor cap, which in this case, it's right here, you know that you're going to have it pointed at the right cylinder. So I'm just going to take all this apart and put the new stuff on. Now I don't know how well you guys can see this, but there is a good amount of corrosion inside that distributor cap, which probably contributed heavily to our misfire. It wasn't a heavy misfire, it was just really annoying. Let's see what the rotor looks like. It's got some carbon scoring on it, but not nearly as bad as the cap, but we're going to go ahead and replace that. And of course, when you're putting new parts on, be sure to make sure they match. Now these are the same, and on these particular distributor caps, it shows the number 1 where the number 1 cylinder is, at least in this arrangement, which unlike the small block Chevy, number 1 would be here, pointing towards the number 1 cylinder. On this particular setup, it's actually pointing at the passenger side bank. So keep that in mind, and that's why you want to trace your wires as well. But we're going to go ahead and slap all this together. And always remember, because I've done this before, put the rotor back in before you put the cap on, and then try to figure out why it won't start. Well, now that we got the tune-up done, I can throw the airbox back in. Pretty much done under here, except I want to show you guys one thing. And that's, when I was driving this truck, Now this being a 98, it's got the 5.2 in it, and it's got a 46 RE transmission in it. So 4-speed, the 6 is rated for torque, and then E is governed electronically. The R is for rear-wheel drive. Now I noticed when I was coming back that the shift points were all over the place, just everywhere. Sometimes it'd shift at 2100, sometimes it'd shift at 3000, but it was firm shifts. I wasn't worried about it. And then I took it out and did a couple wide open throttle pulls with it just to make sure it wouldn't blow past the shift. And once I was getting ready to turn to come back, it started downshifting way early, like downshifting harsh enough that it chirped the rear tires. So the first thing I checked was the throttle valve cable, or the kickdown cable on a Mopar here. And the problem is, I pull this off, that's all the way out. It is not returning. See how that's there? That's why its shift points are sticking all over the place, is because that's not freely moving, allowing the kick down on the side of the transmission to return to adjust the shift points. Now I went underneath, it's all attached, it's just slow. So I'm going to lubricate the belt crank down there, and I also got a carb spring return kit to get it to assist to pull it forward, and I'll show you guys that once we get under the truck to start doing that stuff. But if you're having issues with your Dodge 4-speed transmission shifting, check your kick down not only up here and your adjustment, check it down at the transmission. Unlike a GM, it's an external linkage. It doesn't go into the pan where the cable hooks up. It's on the outside on a bell crank. Also, if you drive any Magnum Mopar or any newer Mopar, 9 times out of 10, you're going to need a throttle position sensor. This will also affect your idle, shift points, drivability, jerking, stuff like that. And I'll show you on the scan tool, but always check these for smooth operation. And sometimes even the new ones are off. I did put a new one on this truck, and it was about 7% throttle off of what it should be, which was causing the truck to idle high. Now, I ended up robbing one off my son's Jeep that is going away, and it put it right back where we needed to be, and it wasn't jumpy like the original one. There's ways you can get around that. If you wallow the holes out here, you can adjust the pitch and your starting point of throttle, but I just grabbed this one, checked the parameters, it was in spec, it fixed the idling issue. So let's get this buttoned up and get underneath. I'll get you guys under here with me, and I'll show you what I'm talking about on this kickdown or TV cable. So up on the side of the transmission, there's your shift linkage. Oh god, let me find a there we go, better angle of attack here. So the one in front is the shift linkage, and the one behind the shift cable there is your throttle valve. You can see that the cable hooks up, and it can okay. So here's our throttle kick down right here. See how that's not returning? I can push it all the way and it just stays. So that's what's causing our odd shift points. And you can see here, it already has a spring on it, but it's doing nothing. So I'm going to shoot some lube up and around this bell crank and maybe add a spring so it pulls it back. But it, like I said, if you're having shifting issues with your 42, 44, or 46 REs and your 42 or 46 RH, make sure to check that this kickdown bell crank is returning and this one is not. So we're going to put some schmutz up there, let that soak in, see if this action gets a little better, and then I'm going to move on down to replacing the U-joints, which you can't see right now, but we'll get this drive shaft out as well. Well, now that we got the drive shaft out, there's no play in this U-joint, so I'm just going to leave that be. That one's good, but this one, not so much. You could see that the cap had actually, I don't know, rotted away or broke, but that's not what you want, so we're going to go ahead and replace that. Alright, well, the first thing is we got to get those nasty old clips out. So I'm going to grab a chisel, unless I have one handy here. Might be able to beat it in a little bit. See, there's really nothing left of the U-joint, and see if we can break the rust loose. And that looks like it punched it in just enough that we can get her out. There we go. Sometimes you just got to give them a whack in to break the dust. And now with this one, we'll just repeat the same thing. Now, is the fun part, is beating this thing out of here. Now what you want to do, you can put heat to it. I don't recommend heating the caps and then pounding them out, because you can deform the ears a lot quicker. So a lot of times, just wail on her. Well, it substantially helped bringing it to the floor. I had a little easier time. Now, before installing our new U-joint caps, I'm just going to take a file and kind of clean these bores up. And this will help the installation of the new U-joint if you just need burr. We should be able to easily drive home our new caps. And remember, when you're installing a U-joint, you want the greaser in the rotation. If you have it going against the rotation, you can actually weaken the U-joint. So I'm going to put it facing forward with the rotation of the drive shaft. And we should be able tap her in. Now this is one of many methods you can use to put new U-joints in. You can use the vise itself to pull it in, but if you have your drive shaft cock, you can actually deform the cap. So I just tap it in, making sure to keep the hammer flat on the cap so you don't, cave it in. And now, when you're putting your second cap on, you want to make sure you can freely move the U-joint and that you're not going to drop any needles as you're doing this. And just keep moving it as you're tapping it in. See how it's moving freely? And before I drive it all the way home, I'm going to put one clip in. Which these aren't clips, these are. So, get your clip in. That's seated. Now we can go ahead and drive our joint home. Still freely moving. in, we can get our other clip in. If I can get it out of the bag. There we go. Just make sure our clip's seated on both sides. So we know the U-joint isn't going to come out. So that should be perfect. We can go ahead and put the drive shaft back in. Alright, so before we got the plugs and the whole tune-up done, we changed the U-joint. I went ahead and put a muffler hanger on it, but one thing that concerns me about this truck is the steering box. Now, the previous owner had replaced it, and well, I'll get you in here and I'll show you what's concerning me. Alright, now that we got some light on the situation, see the steering shaft here, and you can tell that's a newer box. That's kind of more of the raw cast there, but the steering shaft has got an inordinate amount of play in it, and as well does the shaft going down to the pitman arm. I can move that up and down, and it wobbles side to side, so that concerns me pretty good. So you got to kind of watch what you're getting when you're getting some of this reman stuff. So I went, getting mud all over myself, so I went to the local salvage yard that I like to go to all the time, that pretty much always has the parts I need. Got myself a steering box, a factory one out of Dakota. Now, I can spin this around one-handed. That has no play in it. And what I was saying with the other box is this shaft will wobble around in there, like the preload's bad or the bearing's bad. This one's nice and tight. That other one I can grab and move around. So we're going to dig in here. I'm going to soak those fittings for the power steering lines, which they've obviously been off, so they should come back off. Get them out of there, and then pop the pitman arm and 3 bolts the steering shaft. This shouldn't be too bad. I'm going to cross my fingers, but we're going to dig in. Get them nice and soaked. Hopefully I grabbed the right wrench. Ow. Feels really good when you break it loose and you just end up punching the exhaust manifold. That's fairly handy. That one's loose. It's not exactly the right wrench, but oh, that one's a little tighter. Now I'm going to see if I can find an 18. Not enough that it wouldn't be a 11/16 or 3/4, but welcome to the metric gauge. I had to move the heater because my foot was starting on fire. Let's get back in here. Oh yeah. Let's see if I can leverage this without breaking my hand. Oh, that one is... she's a little tighter. Alright, plan Z. Might be able to get it through the fender well. I really don't want to put all my force into it and, you know, sink my knuckles into this again, because that's going to win every time. Yeah, this will be fun. Well, now we're ready to dig that 13mm bolt out of there, but it's got a pretty good amount of play before it actually does anything. So let's see if we can fit the old Milwaukee down in there. Of course, battery cables are gonna grouse me up here. Yeah. make sure we drop that bolt or I'll never find it. Well, there we go. Get out of there. Get that bolt out, set that up on the cowl. Now, the shaft should just slide off there. Maybe. Kinda. Yeah, we might need to spread it open just a little bit, but yeah, might need to spread this open and then we can peel it off, which usually you can jam a screwdriver down in the gap there, kind of widen it out, and then you can get it off there. But I'm going to try to pry it, and I'm going to need both hands. Now, I really don't condone beating your children unless they bring their truck home covered in mud for you to work on it. Yeah, this is fun. Have kids, they said. Oh, yeah, it'll be fun, they said. All right. So, maybe we'll get lucky. We can just tap that guy up through there. If I don't hit the camera with the hammer. Of course. Oh, wonderful. So, in case you can't get it out, you can grab yourself one of these. The pickle fork, which is terrible for eating pickles. Ask me how I know. But works pretty well for popping these kinds of joints out. So I don't have a whole lot of room. I'm going to whack this in there and get that pitman arm free from the center link here. Well, after feasting on all kinds of minerals and probably some sort of defecation, I got the reman box out of here. Now, this sector shaft, I don't know if I can do it very well, but when it was in the truck, you could get this to wobble real good. On this one, it seems much tighter. The joint at the end here is in good shape, as this one is as well, but this one will have much less play because there's about a quarter turn, a whole lot of nothing in that wheel. So I'm going to heave this back up, have my after dinner snack, and get it bolted in. Yeah, let's do it. All right. Well, after that bit of a struggle, we've got the new box in. I actually need to, once I get it off the ramps here, I'll finish tightening up those bolts. I need to put the big impact on it because there's a bunch of crud and stuff in the threads on the mounting ears on the box, but we're just gonna give it all the torque and run them through. That'll clean the threads out. Now, one thing I was gonna do, at least get done today, was I was gonna do a transmission filter, fluid, and band adjustment on this here trans. So get all that set up. All right. Well, because I don't feel like I deserve a shower enough, I'm going to go ahead and find the right socket first. We're going to drain the fluid out of this transmission. It looks like someone's put a pan on this at one point because it's got a drain plug in it. Mopar ones, factory Mopar pans didn't have a drain plug. So this will actually make my life a little better, all things considered. Yeah. Doesn't smell too terrible, but put this over here with the mud so I can lose it. Get this drained out. We'll pop the pan out. And I know I've showed you guys quickly how a band adjustment goes, but I'll get you back in here and do a little more proper representation on how to do a band adjustment in one of these rear-wheel drive 4-speed Mopar automatics. 3-speed with overdrive, technically. There's not a physical fourth gear, per se. Oh, Oh, nice wet mud right on the shoulder. Nice and cold. Who needs a day at the spa, huh? Just crawl under a truck. Get all the crud out of there. Looking inside, doesn't seem to be a whole lot of crud on the magnet, which is a good sign. We'll let that drip dry for a little bit, and then we can pop the filter out, and of course get it our band adjustment on the back side inside of the pan here, and probably get it the outside one pretty easily. So I want to take a little break, let this kind of drip down so I don't get absolutely disgusting under here. I mean, worse than it already is. Looks like I got in a fight with Frosty the Snowman if he was made out of mud balls and Everglades. So, to perform your rear band adjustment, like I had done on the V10, get a little more light on there. I'm gonna go ahead, loosen that up. There we go. We're gonna loosen that up. You're gonna back this off enough that you can run your inner one in. Once I find the wrench. Alright. So now you're gonna run this in until it gets tight. Then you're gonna select the proper wrench. Run her the rest of the way in. Oh, come on. And then what you want to do is torque this to 72 inch-pounds going in. And once you torque it, then you come back and we'll show you what to do there. Once you get this torqued, which I'm not going to do, I've done 1,000 of these. I just really feel them kind of right about there. Make sure you're not bottoming this nut while you're doing it, because it'll throw it off. Now we're going to turn it out 4 turns. So you can do half turns, quarter turns, whatever. So there's 1/4. Half. Yeah, God. 3/4. And then you just keep running it out like that. But I'm going to set the phone down because my arms get tired. So just remember, run it out 4 turns, hold this steady, and tighten this down, which is what we'll do when I come back. Alright, we got her turned out 4. Just run this in, make sure you're not turning this at the same time. And then what I'm going to do, take both wrenches, hold this still, and tighten our jam nut down. So that's the rear band adjustment. This is for reverse and first gear, and the other one's for second and third on the side. So I'm going to finish this up, get the filter back in it, and we'll go to the side of the transmission and show you how to do that one. Alright, now that we got you in here, this one's the least fun one to do because it's right up here. Right there where I got the wrench on, right next to your kickdown and right behind your front trans line. So you're gonna, what I did was you put the socket up on there, and then I use an extension and get between these springs to loosen the jam nut. And then you're going to run this one in, same thing as inside the pan. Run it in, torque it to 72 inch-pounds, and then the outside one comes back 2 1/4 turns. So unfortunately I can't do this one-handed, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. So just like the inside, but 2 1/4 turns. Alright. Well, I guess it's time to go ahead and put fluid back in this thing. Now, you typically your service fill when you drop a pan filter and everything. It's anywhere between 3.5 to 4.5 quarts. I've got a gallon behind me, but I'm going to start out with throwing half a quart in, and then this stuff, which will give me 2 quarts off the bat once I mix it. Oop. Didn't go down fast enough. There we go. Now, we're going to get the good stuff in here. A lot of times I don't believe in snake oil, especially ones I can't open for some reason. There we go. But I will tell you that I had an 89 Camaro with a 700 R4 in it, and it slipped to no end, to the point where when I drained a little fluid out of it, it was silver, and I put a quart of this Lucas in there, shifted perfect. Ain't a permanent fix, but it definitely doesn't hurt, that's for sure. Alright, well, before we take it out for a drive, I seen the check engine light was on, and I just wanted to check and see, using my trusty brick scanner. I love these things. The only code we got is 02. Now, this is something I wanted to bring up to a lot of people and explain a couple things here. Number one, I'm not concerned about this code at all because it's bank 1, sensor 2. So it's a downstream sensor. That means past the cat. That does not affect your fuel economy, nothing. All sensor 2 is for is to tell the PCM that the catalytic converter itself is working. If it's sensor 1, that controls your fuel trim, and that would affect your fuel economy. Sensor 2 does not. Okay? So, another thing I wanted to talk about, as long as I got the scanner hooked up, is the fact that, a lot of people will see their check engine light on, and they will take it to AutoZone and have it scanned. Well, and of course, you go there, and say it pulls up an O2 sensor code like that. They're going to tell you, oh, it's an O2 sensor code. You got to replace your O2 sensor. No. These codes in this system do not tell you the actual thing that's wrong with it. It tells you that there's a problem that's affecting a certain system. So if you had an O2 sensor code on sensor 1, the upstream fuel trim sensor, it's not always the O2 sensor. You could have, your plugs could be 1,000,000 years old. You could have a bad fuel pressure regulator. You could have low fuel pressure, giving you a rich or a lean condition that's throwing a code in your O2 where it's saying, oh, this ain't right, I'm going to throw a code. So when you pull your codes, take your due diligence, and Google it. There's so much information out there right now that'll lead you to what is affecting the system that's throwing the code, and that's how you properly fix something. I've seen people spend so much money on oxygen sensors just throwing parts at stuff because, oh, well, they said this is the code I have. And I've gotten in a lot of arguments with people that the code is just a condition. It's not what's wrong with it. The check engine light, all it's for is for emissions purposes. So that comes on, it says, hey, our emissions aren't emissioning. It's not, oh, you got a rod knock, oh, you got this, that, or your other thing. All that cares about is your tailpipe emissions. Everything in line, it needs to make up a perfect scenario for that to be off and it to go, okay, we should be, perfect emissions. So that's just my little rant on that. I'm just going through our PIDs here, get down to our O2 sensors. Sensor 2. So we're just gonna sit here and watch these. Did this freeze frame it? data. And just make sure, because you should see it moving up and down the voltages, especially on bank 1, which I don't know if my scanner's just having a... It's very cold too, so it might not be keeping up with the actual parameters. These don't like to work when they're 20 degrees. Yeah, see, when I rev it, it ain't doing anything, so... Alright, well, that's one thing I need to do is get this old girl warmed up, because she's not computing. But what I'd be looking for would be to look at my O2 sensors, sensor 2, and see if this voltage is fluctuating. And your sensor 1, which is your fuel trim, should be fluctuating as well, going from a high value of 0.8 or 9 down to 0.1. And just to prove my point, the sensor 2 does not control fuel trim. Not available. Not fuel trim. Okay. But if you did have a bad sensor, this reading would probably be out of limits. It'd be over a volt or 0. So there you go. Let's take this thing for a drive. I'm going to clear the codes and see if it pops back. All right. Let's see how she does. Well, she went into gear. That's a plus. Few shifts feel pretty good. I never was a big fan of the 44 RE. There's a marketable difference between a 44 and a 46. These just don't shift like the bigger transmissions. They kind of whereas a properly maintained 46 is like that. Especially like my red truck's got a reman trans in it. That thing just shifts perfect, drops RPMs. You feel it nice and firm in a truck. Just really a lot better than these beefed up 42 REs, that's for sure. All in all, keep a maintenance, they'll last forever. It doesn't matter what it is. Dodge got a bad rap for their transmissions because they go out all the time. Yes, because you're supposed to maintenance them every 20,000 miles, including a band adjustment. And if you don't do that, and you treat it like a GM transmission, they go out, which, I mean, GM's not that much better. There's a reason why we all know the 4L60 is a 4L neutral. So, I've never had a Dodge Chrysler transmission, a rear drive transmission go out on me. Ever. Never even had one start slipping. A friend of mine actually had a 98 5.9 Limited Grand Cherokee that when he took the pan off, most of the band material for the front band, the 2-3 band, was in the pan. And we just adjusted the snot out of it, and it drove fine. It probably destroyed the drum, but it worked. Now I can tell a major difference in between how this used to drive with that other steering box in there, because there was nothing for like that much. And this actually does some. It does need an alignment. I did have to put a inner tie rod end in on the driver's side because I could move the wheel about that far at the wheel assembly. So that's just something that was safety. So I'll schedule it for an alignment, get it taken in. It's just pretty good. Yeah, it's actually a good little truck. I mean, almost 145,000 on it. Not too bad. It does need rear shocks and a pinion seal, which I've had enough fighting in the mud for a day, so we'll do that some other time. I just wanted to get the main stuff done. Get the tune-up done, get the transmission shifting correctly, which I showed you guys the issue with the kickdown or TV cable, and do a trans service, put the steering box in. I also changed the oil. That way it's ready to go. Hopefully not get the tar beat out of it all the time. This thing shakes. It did before when I drove it home. I can't imagine what's changed. But, you know, having 83,000 pounds of mud in every wheel on one side is really good for the bearings. Breaks them in, you know. So, I mean, get that troweled out. And this truck, other than the shake because of stupidity, it drives really good. It's a good little truck. I actually wouldn't mind having it if I didn't already have 6 vehicles. But drive it down the road, you know, it doesn't pull, doesn't wander. It pretty good. No hands. Look at that. Hey, thanks for driving with your high beams on. It's daylight. Sorry, I have moments when people are dumb. You know, the sideways blue flying jellyfish means your high beams are on, in case you didn't know. Just there we go. Good little truck. Well, we'll get her back to the garage and yeah, we'll finish this little deal up. Well, now that I'm covered in about every fluid known to man and mud, we got this thing all set. Other than I said the rear shocks and the pinion seal, but I'm tired of dealing with this. So basically, you know, you could still find good vehicles for a good deal these days. This truck, you know, 145,000 miles on it, bulletproof 5.2. Like I said, I was mistaken earlier. It doesn't have the 46 RE. It's got the 44, which is basically an overblown 42. But it's a good little truck. This was $1,000. 4-wheel drive, heat works, cruise works, AC works. It drives good once the mud's out of the wheels. It's a good little truck, and I threw, I don't know, probably $400 of parts at it, doing the tune-up, you know, putting the tie rod end in. I got the steering box for $75 from the local wrecker. You know, just stuff like that, to where you can find a vehicle like this that isn't perfect. It's got, you know, it's got a little rust on the fender, a little rust on the box and the cab corners, but it's a winter truck. You know, you could make this nice, but you know, $1,000, some parts, gets you where you need to go reliably, safely, of all things. So there we go. I mean, if you enjoyed kind of looking at what you can do to buy something that ain't perfect at all and make it really good, you know, here you go. So that being said, you can clearly find this, because there's a couple other things I'm going to do to it just to doll it up a little more. But you can find this, every other project I've worked on, the C10, Brute Farce, and we got the Checker that got the big block build coming up for that, and all kinds of other stuff that I can't remember. So you can find all that here on YouTube. You can find me at T.N.T. Garage and Performance on Facebook, You can also find me at T.N.T. Garage or Performance on Instagram. And don't forget, go down below. I think it's right there. Go ahead and like this, and then move over, hit subscribe, and then the bell. That way it lets you know when my new videos are coming out. And, share it, comment on it, do whatever you need. But this kind of goes against what I do, unfortunately. I fixed it. It was broken, I fixed it. Which, well, that's a good thing sometimes. So remember, until next time, if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you soon.